I'm 81 years old. The most shocking part of being a widow, no one warns you that your own family starts to treat you like you're already gone. They wrap you up so tight in their worry that you forget you have hands that can still hold things, a heart that can still want things. You start to believe you're made of glass. Let me tell you what happened. It started 6 months after Arthur's funeral. I washed the last coffee cup he ever used. I put it on the shelf, clean and shining. The silence in my kitchen screamed at me. It wasn't quiet. It was a hum, a pressure. It felt like a machine left running in an empty house. That hum is what drove me to the garage. I stood there looking at Arthur's project. His 1967 Ford Mustang. A rusted shell he called his retirement. My son David said, "Mom, we should sell it. It's just a hunk of junk." But I touched the cold fender. I heard Arthur's laugh. Right then I made a decision. I called my grandson Leo. He's 22, an art student. He just nodded when I asked him to help me fix the car. David was furious. He said, "He's not a mechanic. You'll get hurt." But Leo showed up with a toolbox. We stared at the engine. We were lost. Then Sal showed up. He's my neighbor, 78, a retired mechanic. He heard us struggling. He marched in and said, "You're gonna flood it." He took over. He showed Leo how to change the spark plugs. He talked to the car like an old friend. For the first time since Arthur died, the garage felt alive. That humming in my ears got quieter. But then my daughter Margaret saw my hands. She organizes my life. Doctor appointments, bridge club. She said, "Mother, this is absurd. You have a heart condition." She pointed to her calendar for me. I looked at my dirty hands. I didn't argue. I just stopped going to bridge club. The silence on my phone was loud. It was my small rebellion. Leo and I worked late under a droplight. He talked about his fears. I talked about Arthur singing in the shower. Sal brought pizza and talked about his late wife, Rosa. We were a trio of broken parts, fitting together. Then Margaret came for a wellness check. She saw us laughing, covered in grease. Her face was pure ice. The next morning, David and Margaret were in my living room. David said, "This has to stop." They had a plan. Sell the car. More in-home care. They said it was for safety. They said it was what Arthur would have wanted. I felt the walls closing in. I saw it then. They were grieving too, by trying to freeze me in place. Our griefs were parallel lines, never touching. I said I'd think about it. The moment they left, I went to the garage. We had the engine back together. Sal told me on the phone, it might run or it might blow up. I sat in the driver's seat, Arthur's seat. Leo stood by the hood. My heart beat wild against my doctor's orders. I turned the key. It cranked. It coughed. Then it roared to life. A loud, sputtering, living roar. Dust fell from the rafters. Leo whooped. I cried. The sound brought everyone. David looked pale. Margaret looked stunned. But seeing the car alive, seeing me alive, something changed. David asked Leo to show him what we did. Margaret stayed, arms crossed, but she didn't leave. We drove it around the block. It chugged and shook. Arthur's project was moving. But when I parked it, the real shock hit me. The goal was never to finish the car. The goal was to start me. That night, the house was quiet again. I missed Arthur so much it ached. But the silence was different. It was just a space now, not a pressure. I could still feel the engine in my hands. I picked up the phone. I called Margaret. Not to apologize, to invite her for coffee, to tell her about carburetors. She came. She didn't talk about calendars. She asked, what was Dad's favorite part of the car? I took her to the garage. Leo and David were there polishing chrome. I showed her the fender Arthur loved. She touched it. David said he'd been watching restoration videos online. We were all passengers now, on Arthur's road, but going somewhere new together. So here's my warning. The shock isn't the loneliness. It's becoming a stranger. Don't let them put you on the shelf, clean and shining. Get your hands dirty. Start the project. Listen for your own engine to turn over. You have to rebuild yourself from the inside out. No one tells you that. Now I am. That invitation began a new, slower project. Margaret started coming by the garage, not to check on me, but to watch. She'd stand in the doorway with her coffee. One day, she asked Leo a question about the paint color. Just a small thing, but it was a start. David began showing up on Saturdays, bringing his own set of gloves. He'd ask Sal questions, really listening to the answers. We became a strange little crew. But here's the thing. It wasn't perfect. The car was still a mess. It broke down more than it ran. And I still had days where the silence in the house felt too big. Days where I'd pick up Arthur's coffee cup just to feel the weight of it. The grief didn't leave. It just made room. It made room for the smell of oil and the sound of Sal's laugh and the sight of my grandson's proud smile when a part finally fit. I was rebuilding the car, but really, we were all rebuilding something. We were learning how to be a family again, without Arthur in the center. We were finding new ways to connect, through grease and frustration and tiny victories. It was messy, it was loud, and it was the most alive I'd felt in years. But then came the day we tried to drive it to the old ice cream stand, Arthur's favorite. The car sputtered and died right at the end of the driveway. Smoke came from the hood. David and Leo scrambled. Margaret just looked at me from her car, her face saying, "I told you so." I sat on the curb, grease on my good slacks. Sal couldn't fix it this time. We pushed the beast back into the garage. The silence that fell wasn't the old hum. It was worse. It was the sound of failure. Everyone left quietly. I was alone with the dead car. I put my head against the steering wheel. I cried. I said out loud, "Arthur, I can't do this." I thought he'd want me to finish it. But sitting there, I realized Maybe he never meant to finish it at all. Maybe the tinkering was the whole point for him too. The project wasn't the car, it was the hours. And my project wasn't to finish for him, it was to start for me. Even if it was broken, especially because it was broken. I sat there with my head against the steering wheel of that broken down Mustang, the smell of burnt oil and failure in the air, and I finally understood. I was wrong about what Arthur left me. I thought he left me a project to finish, a puzzle to solve for him. But he didn't. He left me a permission slip. All those hours he spent tinkering, they weren't about the car. They were about the quiet joy of being absorbed, of having your hands and your mind in the same place. He was showing me how to be alive inside your own time, and I'd been too busy bringing lemonade to see it. The mistake I made, and the mistake my children made, was thinking love after loss is about preservation. We thought loving Arthur meant keeping everything he touched exactly as it was, and loving me meant keeping me safe from everything that could smudge or break. But love isn't a museum. It's not a clean, shining cup on a shelf. Love is a living, breathing, messy thing that requires getting your hands dirty. It requires risk. My children were trying to love me by building a perfect, quiet cage, and I was letting them because part of me believed I belonged in it. That's the shock no one warned you about. How easily you can become a collaborator in your own disappearance. So here is my advice, plain and simple. Don't perform living. Just be there in the mess of it. If you're the one grieving, find your Mustang. It doesn't have to be a car. It can be a garden you overwater, a terrible watercolor class, a bread recipe you keep burning. Find the thing that makes you lean forward, not back into the chair of your grief. Let it be hard. Let yourself be bad at it. The value is in the leaning, not the result. And if you love someone who is grieving, especially someone older, don't just manage their life. Ask them what they want to break. Ask them what they want to build. Don't just schedule their doctor's appointments. Hand them a wrench or a paintbrush or a mixing bowl and stand beside them while they make a glorious, terrible mess of it. Your job isn't to prevent the breakdown on the driveway. Your job is to be there on the curb beside them when it happens. Not with an "I told you so," but with a shrug that says, "Well, we'll figure it out tomorrow." That's the love that rebuilds. Not from the outside in, with schedules and safety plans, but from the inside out, with spark plugs and sputtered conversations and shared pizza over a greasy engine block. I'm 81. I don't know if we'll ever get that Mustang to run reliably to the ice cream stand. Some days that feels okay. Other days, the missing him is a physical weight on my chest. But the hope isn't in finishing. The hope is in the trying. It's in the fact that my garage is no longer a shrine to a ghost. It's a workshop where my grandson teaches me about color theory while we sand Bondo, where my son quietly studies wiring diagrams, where my daughter sometimes stands and just listens to the stories Sal and I tell about Arthur and Rosa. We are making a new noise together, a patchwork, imperfect sound that keeps the terrible humming silence at bay. you still have time. Maybe not years and years, but you have now. And now is enough to get grease under your nails. Now is enough to turn a key and startle yourself with the roar you can still make. If this story of a rusty car and a rusty old woman starting over meant something to you, then do something for me. First, take that thing you've been putting off, the book, the class, the visit, the project, and just take one small step toward it today. That's the most important thing. Then, if you're willing, help me pass this warning along. Subscribe to this channel. Every time you do, it tells the algorithms that stories with gray hair and grease-stained hands are worth listening to. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Give this a like. It's a small thing, but it's a signal, a way of saying, I see you, to someone who might feel invisible. And in the comments, I'd really like to know, what's your Mustang? What's the thing, big or small, that made you or someone you love lean forward again? Share it. Your story might be the permission slip someone else desperately needs. If you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a parent, a grieving spouse, share this with them directly. Don't just put it on a shelf. And finally, if you have a story of starting over later in life, we are collecting them. There's a link below to a simple form where you can tell it. It might become a book, a real one you can hold, full of warnings and hope from people who learned the hard way that life isn't over until you decide it is. Thank you for listening. Now go get your hands dirty.